and welcome once again to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is September 17th, and we're on page 47 in your magazines. Today we have a two-part article entitled Cooling Hacks, Modern versus Ancient Wisdom.
So we need to look at our word hack here. So if you're computer literate, you know a hack is a special way to get into someone's computer, usually to do something illegal, but not always. That's a hack. But today in our context and the way most people use it really just means a tip. But if this article was cooling tips, nobody's paying attention. We need to have hacks in order for people to pay attention. So we have some modern ways people have learned to cool off, and tomorrow we'll have some ancient ways to cool off.
We would call that clickbait.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah, if there's something that attracts you because it looks kind of outrageous, maybe a little bit exaggerated, I wouldn't call it clickbait, but that's what we would call it if it's something that's a bit exaggerated. And it's spelled C-L-I-C-K-B-A-I-T. Bait is what you put on a fishing line to catch fish. Click is what you do with your mouse. So clickbait. Yeah, it makes it more attractive to the reader.
As a matter of fact, speaking of clickbait, a few years ago with some of my home tutoring students, these two great boys, they're real smart and very interested in computers and science. They shared me one of these life hack videos. And it was very clickbaity. It was very obvious that some of these were complete garbage. So I said, well, let's do the experiments ourselves. And these involve things like putting pieces of coal in a jar of peanut butter.
Yeah.
And you get this refined diamond like crystal thing.
Oh, nonsense.
It was just bonkers nonsense. Some of them looked more plausible than others, but we tried to recreate them one by one down the video. And some of them, with enough practice, you could get some kind of satisfying result, but nothing that couldn't have been handled more just the way you're used to doing it. So sure, there are some tips that exist out there, but most of these tips, these hacks are here just to get you to watch a video so you can watch an ad and the video producer makes some money.
Yeah, pure entertainment plus advertising. You know, what that makes me think of first is I would not want to waste that peanut butter. Peanut butter is too precious to waste like that.
We stuck a big old piece. Getting the coal was harder than the peanut butter, if I'm being honest. But today we have some real hacks that you can use. This is not clickbait nonsense.
Okay, some newer ones and some older ones, modern versus ancient wisdom. In many places around the world, summer is a time of brutal heat and humidity. What's more, global climate change is expected to make things worse. The world is experiencing an upward trend in temperatures, with 2023 standing out as the warmest year ever recorded. Even in temperate regions, extreme heat waves have become more frequent occurrences. Thus, it should come as no surprise that people are always looking for new ways to beat the heat.
While the first action most people take is to turn on their air conditioning units as temperatures go up, other effective measures can be taken in the home to counter the heat. Strategically placing fans can enhance air circulation. During cooler periods, placing a fan near an open window can bring in fresh air, and when it's warmer, positioning a fan to face outward can help expel the indoor warmth.
Understanding the body's reaction to heat can also aid in keeping cool. Blood vessels expand when the body's temperature rises, which increases blood flow to the skin to release more heat. The cooled blood then circulates through the body. Applying a cold patch or running cool water over pulse points where blood vessels are close to the surface can boost this cooling effect.
Our diets can similarly have an enormous impact on body temperature. While consuming a big bowl of ice cream might seem like a great idea to cool off, it can actually warm the body internally because heat is generated when the body is digesting fats. Likewise, foods high in protein, such as beef or pork, can increase body temperature due to the energy required for digestion. Instead, opt for meals that include mainly fruits and vegetables on hot days because they are easier to digest and abundant in water, which helps cool the body.
That's great advice. We're going to go back to the beginning. In many places around the world, summer is a time of brutal heat and humidity. Just keep in mind that summer is different in the northern hemisphere from the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, so it was funny reading this article a little bit because mentally in September, even though I've been here for 20 years now, mentally September to me is still football season. It's still the beginning of the best season of the year, cooler weather in the fall. It's like 10 degrees Celsius in the evenings where we're from, maybe colder many times.
Yes.
But here it's like,
hot.
Oh, it's still only 35 degrees.
Exactly. And they also mentioned humidity, which is what makes people really feel the heat here in Taiwan.
Yes. Being back home earlier this year, I stepped off the plane and how dry it was. My body felt so good.
Yeah.
Yes. And here, the humidity it's just brutal, to use that word again.
I had that exact same feeling when I stepped off the plane in Lyon. Going to Grenoble, I thought, so dry.
I have one of my students moved to Texas earlier this year, and I told him before you go, I said, when you go, I want you to step off the plane and take one deep breath and pay attention to the humidity. And sure enough, I got an email a couple of days later, like, oh, it's really different.
Yeah, that's right. And every time we come back to Taiwan, the first thing we feel and smell is the heavy air.
Everything I feel is like a punch to the face. It's the humidity.
Heavy air. All right. Yeah, the humidity really makes you feel the heat. And also the cold in winter when it's really humid.
Yes.
All right. What's more, global climate change is expected to make things worse. It's making a lot of things worse. The first thing that comes to mind for me is the dying corals. The corals are being bleached and dying.
Right. Especially with the higher temperatures, increased acidity, you're going to have coral problems.
The world is experiencing an upward trend in temperatures, with 2023 standing out as the warmest year ever recorded. There are global warming deniers. A lot of people say, oh, this is just normal. It's no big deal.
There are a lot of people that deny it in the United States still.
They are probably going to find out too late.
I think there are enough doubters around, or at least people that think that we could not change and not experience things too terribly, or they're so old that they don't care that things are going badly I'm dying anyways, that we may be in some real trouble. That's my pessimistic worldview. That's how I imagine. Now, when we say the warmest year ever recorded, what does that mean? Well, most weather recording starts around the year 1850, but realistically, we're thinking 1880. However, there is a place in central England that has had records kept since 1659, if you can believe that, which is very impressive to think that far back.
This whole time that we've been talking about global warming, people are saying, well, it's a hoax and we shouldn't have to change. We should have changed even without global warming. We shouldn't be burning fossil fuels because we're going to run out of them and they create a lot of pollution. There's a lot of things we should change even without global warming.
So what if climate deniers are correct that global warming is a hoax, but we continue down a path of creating green technology and stop using fossil fuels? What is the after effect? We will have cleaner air, cleaner water, less pollution. Even if climate deniers are correct, we still win in the end because overall people have a better environment.
That's what I have been thinking all along, and I don't know why people don't talk about this more. Okay, even in temperate regions, extreme heat waves have become more frequent occurrences.
So temperate is a key word here. Temperate, of course, looks like temperature, but it is a little different. A temperate region, usually, think of like southern Canada, northern United States, where you have 4 distinct seasons. September and October and November are fall. January, February, and March are very cold and snowy, etc.
In other words, the place where Chris and I come from.
we come from temperate regions.
Temperate regions. Thus, it should come as no surprise that people are always looking for new ways to beat the heat. It should come as no surprise that it is a very good idiom, but don't overuse it. It can also be a cliche. And so, beat the heat is a really nice phrase because it rhymes, ways to cool off.
Beat the heat is a phrase you will hear all the time if you watch TV. Or listen to the radio in the United States. That is just one of those phrases that is beat into you over the years. Beat the heat. Let's continue to our next paragraph. While the first action most people take is to turn on their air conditioning units as temperatures go up, other effective measures can be taken in the home to counter the heat. Try to say that in one breath.
It's not easy. Do you know why it is so swelteringly hot in Taipei in the summer? It's not just because of the sun and the weather. It's because so many people have their air conditioning on, and that spews hot air out into the air you're breathing when you're out in the city. I can't say I don't understand it. I do, because Taipei is quite crowded. I live on a hilltop. I live in a mountain, and we have a lot of forests around us. So if we keep the window open and we bring in air with fans, as they're going to say in the article in a minute, I don't have an air conditioner, and it's fine. I sweat a bit, but it's tolerable. It's better than these blasted air conditioning units that are using so much energy. Do you know how your energy is produced in Taiwan? Do you like nuclear power? Do you like coal burning, putting pollution in the air? There are costs.
There are definitely side effects of this. In my personal house, we don't use air conditioning until I'm showering before I go to school, because once after I shower, I'm all sweaty, and then I can't even get my clothes on. But during that window, we'll have our air conditioning on. Otherwise, my wife and we purchased a really strong fan that we blow right onto me, because I need much cooler temperatures than my wife does. She is a very traditional Taiwanese person in that she is much better with the heat than I am.
I just don't like air conditioning. It feels artificial and it's not even, so you'll have like a blast of cold air. I had to move my seat in an auditorium yesterday. It was just so freezing. There are a lot of disadvantages to air conditioning. See if you can do without it. If you're in the city, I do realize it's a bit difficult.
We do have the phrase counter the heat, which is just another way to say beat the heat. But I promise you, no ad person will say counter the heat over beat the heat.
Exactly.
But it's good to know this word.
That's right.
Let's continue here. Strategically placing fans can enhance air circulation.
We've already mentioned that, and it's explained more in the next sentence.
Strategically just saying careful consideration.
Yeah, you have a plan.
All right, let's look at our next sentence here. During cooler periods, placing a fan near an open window can bring in fresh air, and when it's warmer, positioning a fan to face outward can help expel the indoor warmth.
Okay, third paragraph. Understanding the body's reaction to heat can also aid in keeping cool. So if you understand what your body is doing to keep you cooler, you may be able to adjust your behavior in some ways to cool yourself down. And we've been talking about sweat. That is a key issue.
Before we move on, Karen, here, I had a question for you. I was just thinking about it. When did air conditioners become standard for most people in Taiwan? I asked the Taiwanese this question, and nobody could give me a good answer. I get the feeling that you probably knew this because of how sensitive our bodies will be compared to an average Taiwanese person to the heat. We're much better in the cold, right? And Taiwanese are much more effective in the heat. But I imagine Karen probably was thinking more carefully about air conditioning than maybe, I don't know, just some other people.
Well, I can say that I was not exchange student. I was a student here in the 70s living with a host family, and they already had air conditioning. That was the 70s, mid-70s. So it's been quite a while. Middle class.
I still remember most of my elementary school students coming in sweaty wrecks from school because they didn't have air conditioning in their school. And I question every now and then, do your classrooms have air conditioning, so on and so forth? When do your teachers turn them on? And I have to say, at least the schools that I teach at, the children currently seem to almost always have air conditioning, at least to a certain amount. They're not coming into my classroom covered head to toe in sweat. They used to be sopping wet, with like totally soaked in sweat because of how hot it was. And I have not experienced that in a number of years now.
Oh, actually, that was true. We're talking about schools. I was talking about a home.
Well, that's what I mean
Residence.
there. So you probably have more experience with that. And I was just thinking about the classrooms in there, too. My kids have no historical context to it. And I think, no, you answered my question correctly. I was thinking about it in those two facets, school versus homes, etc.
But they were careful about when they turned it on. Yeah. They waited until it was really hot because it uses up a lot of electricity.
Sure.
Okay, so next sentence. Blood vessels expand when the body's temperature rises, which increases blood flow to the skin to release more heat. Now, this doesn't tell the whole story yet, but it's kind of giving you the background. This is laying the foundation. So blood vessels, these are the organs that carry blood throughout your body. When you get hot, they will get larger, and that means there's going to be more blood coming to the skin to try to get rid of some of the excess heat in the body.
So a blood vessel are the different size veins in your body. There are different names for the larger and small veins. We have arteries. Those are the big ones. Veins are the just regular sized ones.
That bring the blood back to the lungs.
And then we have capillaries. Those are the little ones like in your nose. But we can just use this word vessels, blood vessels, just as a general term here.
Okay, and the next step in the story, the blood vessels have brought the warm blood to the skin, to the level of the skin, where it can get rid of some of this heat. And so the blood is now cooler, and that cooler blood will circulate, will move around your whole body.
Did you have any particular ways back when we were kids of staying cool? Because, like, for example, I asked my younger sister, I said, when did we get air conditioning? Do you remember? And we want to say we didn't have air conditioning in our apartments until we were in college. We were in our 20s, roughly around the year, it was after the year 2000. And that's the first time we can think we had air conditioning. We know in high school we didn't because of some nights how hot it would get there. And we would have like a wet washcloth and we would rub it all over our body. That was our way, my sister and I way, just dumping a washcloth on yourself.
That's right. So it did get very hot and humid in Minnesota, though not as humid as Taiwan. But as kids, we would run through the sprinkler. That was so much fun.
How about like sweaty nights? Like what did you do on a very hot night? So the word we might use is a sweltering night. So sweltering sounds like the word sweat.
Sometimes you can take a bath, wipe yourself off. You keep wiping off the sweat. You wear very little clothing. You just have short sleeves or no sleeves and just shorts. So I guess you do what you can, and definitely fans.
Yeah, fans were our friend. I think we were short a fan or something, and one of the things we did when we got part-time jobs was buy more fans, my sister and I.
Right. Okay, next sentence. Applying a cold patch or running cool water over pulse points where blood vessels are close to the surface can boost this cooling effect. So Chris and I both did this. We just had a washcloth, we wet it, and it would cool off because the water evaporates, and then just apply it on our skin. And once I was passing it around, and it was a bunch of adults, and they thought I was kind of funny. I said, "Oh, would you like my wet washcloth?" They just kind of looked at me. And I thought, well, don't you want to get cooler?
Yeah, right? Yeah. In the hood, back where we grew up, it was popular to put a wet towel on your head, especially if you were bald or you shaved your head, which was very common. So I grew up in a black neighborhood, and a lot of young black men like to shave their head. They have very short heads, and they'll put a towel over their head. Now, I always had kind of like medium-length blonde hair, so I always looked funnier than my friends, but it did work. Like putting the wet towel on your head and walking around felt pretty good.
You talk about in the hood. In New York City, they will open fire hydrants for kids to play with the water.
Yeah, I feel like Taipei needs more places like that. I know there are a few spots where they have like little fountains you can run through.
They have a water park. A water park.
They need way more water parks in this country.
Good idea. Okay, our last paragraph.
All right. Our diets can similarly have an enormous impact on body temperature.
And that is really, really true. So if you're going to eat a really heavy meal of meat and potatoes and other things with gravy, that's not going to cool you off.
When you start saying gravy, don't you instantly start thinking of like fall and winter?
Yes.
We really do think about our meals as a very seasonal kind of thing. I think almost instinctually. We almost know it from birth that some foods are good in winter, some are much better in the fall and spring and etc.
Gravy was kind of fancy. We almost never had it unless it was a holiday.
All right. So your diet, this means maybe what you regularly eat. You can also go on a diet, of course, when you're trying to lose weight. But here, diets means what we usually eat. While consuming a big bowl of ice cream might seem like a great idea to cool off, it can actually warm the body internally because heat is generated when the body is digesting fats.
Ah, that brings back more memories because when it was hot in summer, in the evening, my mom would often suggest, should we have a treat tonight? So she would take out some money and one of us would go to the corner store and we would buy some popsicles or creamsicles or whatever Often they were ice cream. Sometimes they were more like frozen juice.
Yeah, those frozen, they're just like red-colored sweet water, right? The Freezy Pops, those were so good. Those are my favorite.
Yeah, I like the ice cream, though, I have to say.
So fat is usually uncountable. This is your body fat. But here we're talking about the different fats in your foods, so this is going to be countable. Let's go on to our next sentence here. Likewise, foods high in protein, such as beef or pork, can increase body temperature due to the energy required for digestion.
In other words, not too protein heavy, not too fat heavy.
That's right. I think like salads, cold noodles, those are things we eat in the summer a lot more. And then you eat your spicy hot pot in winter.
Except in Taiwan, they eat hot pot all the time. I don't get it.
Let's go on to our next sentence. Instead, opt for meals that include mainly fruits and vegetables on hot days because they are easier to digest and abundant in water, which helps cool the body.
And this is really true. If you don't feel like a heavy meal, you will often opt for fruit. And we had this a lot of time in the summer. In our family, we called it in Chinese, fruit big meal. So a big meal, that's just fruit. And that would be our dinner in summer.
Yeah, so I think that especially in Taiwan, it is really easy to get some fruit daily. I will say in the United States, it does feel a little bit harder out of some seasons to get fruit, although in the fall, there were always plenty of apples to get very cheaply. Do you have any particular foods that you would eat seasonally, especially for, say, summer to stay cool? What were your go-to foods?
Number 1, watermelon. But the problem is you're not going to sleep through the night.
Yeah, you're going to be, there's a lot of water in watermelon that you're going to the bathroom. Frozen grapes. I always like frozen grapes. I love frozen grapes. Green grapes, not the purple ones.
Frozen food now burns my mouth. I can't have it.
Everyone, if you get some green grapes, put them in the freezer, and if they're a little too cold, like for Karen, take them out and let them sit on your counter for 30 minutes. They'll still be quite cold, but inside it'll turn almost like a popsicle. They are really good, and then you could even squish them into some water. It's very enjoyable. Try it out on the next really hot day.
And now my mouth is watering. That's it for today. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.